various tours, folks. We've just about concluded our tour of Fraunces Tavern. It includes a lot of photographs. And now we're going to do the Fraunces Tavern Museum upstairs. Thank you. So this is the Fraunces Tavern Museum, which is part of Fraunces Tavern. It's on the second floor, and there's a separate payment for this required. For adults, $10, and seniors, it's $5. You pay for this up here. Hi.
Okay, no problem.
Do I look like a senior to you? Thank you. So you want $5, right?
Okay, yeah.
All right, let me
Will
give
it
you
be
my
cash or card?
card.
Card, okay.
Tap.
Oh, yeah, take a tap. Would you like a receipt?
I don't need a receipt.
Okay, have fun.
Thank you very much. So now we've paid our fee to see the Fraunces Tavern Museum. First room we're going into is the portrait room for George Washington. Sadly, there was no photography back in George Washington's day, so we can only guess what he may have really looked like. There's a number of paintings and artist renditions that give us an idea of what he looked like, but they vary. It gives a general idea of what George Washington looked like, but it's very hard to determine. He didn't chop down a cherry tree. He was a land surveyor. And here's a whole bunch of portraits of him. You see, some are very different than others. So it's hard to say what he really looked like. This gives you if you average them all together, you probably get a summary of what George Washington may have looked like. Now, this may be the most accurate one because this was literally a death mask of George Washington. So this is an accurate rendition of what he probably looked like. It was based on a clay impression that was made of him after he died. Here are some other photographs, or not photographs, but paintings of George Washington. You can see a certain amount of variance of how he looked. In many of the photographs, different. This is the one you're most familiar with because this is the one they selected to put on the $1 bill. So you've all seen that one. And this is another room. This is the Clinton room. Governor Clinton set this room up. And it's laid out with beautiful hand-painted wallpaper depicting the story of the American Revolution. Wood-burning fireplace. This picture is allegedly the surrender of Cornwallis in Virginia in Yorktown. Of course, there were no mountains like that in Yorktown, but I guess that's artist's interpretation. It's relatively flat in Yorktown. And there are no mountains clearly like that. That doesn't look anything like Yorktown. It looks like upstate New York, but what is one to do? Here's some of the tables. You notice the Dutch influence of the teapot. And the pipe was a clay pipe. Notice how long the clay pipe was? That was because it was a public pipe. Pipes were kept in taverns, and as you use the pipe, when you were done using it, when you started to use it, you'd break off and get a clean part of the tube of the pipe to use. So you keep breaking it off until it was too short, and then you get another one. This is how napkins were pressed. And during the Confederation, as this tells you, when you read it, the Articles of Confederation occurred between the end of the American Revolution in 1783 and the ratification of the Constitution of 1788. So during that 5-year period, this area where you're sitting now was the seat of the American government. The government leased the tavern. The Congress of the Confederation relocated the seat of the government to New York City in 1985. New York City was the city that was the head of the American government. Fraunces Tavern was used by Congress, Foreign Affairs, and the War Department. Department of Foreign Affairs, 1785 to 88, was here. Secretary John Jay was here. United States United States Morocco Treaty of Peace and Friendship was negotiated here. This was the seat of American government for some 5 years. And these rooms and these buildings were all used for that purpose. This is a famous room that they keep darkened to preserve it. This is where George Washington said goodbye to his troops and had a goodbye dinner for about 40 of his soldiers on the day that the English left. They came here to the tavern. It was hosted by Governor Clinton, who was the governor of New York. You see on the table there's oysters there. In those days, the oysters actually were probably twice the size of those oysters. They were very large oysters that were available right in the Manhattan Bay. And this is where there was a bar. Bar meant, in most taverns, because they were public and people were living there, when the bar closed, they literally locked it by bringing down a set of bars. The bars have been removed. They've had them there previously, but the bars would be brought down and removed so that the guests who were staying upstairs wouldn't sneak down in the middle of the night and start drinking. But this is where George Washington actually made his farewell address to his troops. This is what's called the Long Room in the Samuel Fraunces Tavern. One more floor up, go to the next floor and see what we see there. This is a very interesting room. This is the room, this is the Mandegy Gallery. It's dedicated really to the sons of the American Revolution. They're the people who saved this building back in 1901 and protected it. Who started it all? And there's too much to show you here to go through every display and every window. It's very beautiful what they have here. This would be a typical dinner at Fraunces Tavern. Steaks, corn, beans, potatoes, oysters. Oysters were very plentiful in those days. So, and not as expensive as they are now. They did private dining in Fraunces Tavern. Formal dining. And the people who died there were Paul Revere, Sam Adams, John Hancock, George Washington. The New York Provincial Congress met here, Alexander Hamilton. The New York Chamber of Commerce met here, General Henry Knox and Colonel Talmadge. Here's various things that are of interest. These are particularly interesting. This is one of the teeth of George Washington. This is the hair from George Washington's head that has been kept in. This is one of his teeth. They always alleged in stories about George Washington he had wooden teeth. He didn't have wooden teeth. He actually had teeth that were made from bone, either from elephant tusks or from other animals with tusks. And that's one of the, because he's basically today he'd be a millionaire or a billionaire. So he had teeth, but he probably lived mostly on soft food. These are artifacts that were found when they excavated near Fraunces Tavern. Artifacts that were found. These are additional cannonballs and other artifacts that were found when they excavated this facility. Here's a picture showing the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And that will conclude our tour of Fraunces Tavern Museum.